This is a map of the New York City subway system. If you've never seen it before, it may look like the end result of a child scribbling on a paper. But it's actually the pride of America's otherwise non-existent public transportation network. In a country where most cities treat public transit as an afterthought or don't have it at all, New York somehow built the busiest metro system in the Western world, with 1.2 billion riders annually, more than the London Tube, or about the same as the Berlin U-Bahn, Toronto Subway, Warsaw Metro, and Brussels Metro combined, making it the 9th busiest rapid transit system in the world. It's split into 28 lines, serving 4 of the 5 boroughs, stretching from the tip of the Bronx to the beaches of the Rockaways in Queens, giving it incredible coverage. There's 472 stations across it, or 424 if you count connected stations as one, the second most in the entire world, only behind Beijing. Meanwhile, its system length at 250 miles puts it on par with the London Tube as one of the longest metros in the world. I know it's a lot, but New York City is a global city home to almost 8.5 million people. And when you also consider the tourists from around the world and its metro population, the numbers are more than doubled, so it's very needed. And you know what the craziest thing is? For the city that's known to never sleep, neither does their subway either. It's one of only 2 metros in the world that run 24/7 across its entire network, along with Copenhagen, but New York's is the only large-scale one. This comes at a cost though, because if you compare the New York City subway to other world-class metros, one of the most common complaints is how dirty and smelly it is. Systems like the Tokyo Metro and London Tube close around midnight, which allows for overnight crews to clean it all up before service resumes a few hours later. But for the subway, because there's no shutdown for maintenance, it has to be cleaned while operating, which basically doesn't work. It's the cost of convenience versus comfort. Speaking of convenience though, subway lines run every 2 to 5 minutes during peak hours, and every 10 to 20 minutes during quieter periods, depending on the line of course, which to be fair isn't that amazing. But it gets the job done. This wait time almost gets made up for when you consider something that the New York subway does that almost no other metro in the world dares to: the express versus local setup. Let me explain. See, most metro systems around the world have 2 tracks per line and stop at every station. But many NYC subway lines, especially in Manhattan, are built with 4 tracks instead. The 2 outer tracks are for the local trains, which stop at every station. And the 2 inner tracks are for express trains, which skip most stations and only stop at major hubs. So it allows you to travel long distances faster. For example, on the A line, you can ride express from 59th Street Columbus Circle all the way to 125th Street with no stops in between, while a local train on the C line will make about 8 stops in the same stretch. It's the difference between saving a couple of minutes of your time. The reason this is a thing is because New York's 4-track design is a holdover from its early 20th century construction, when private companies competed to offer faster, long-distance services in the same corridor. In fact, the modern-day subway system, owned by the government of New York City and leased to the Metropolitan Transport Authority, is the product of the unification between 3 separate companies in 1940: the Interborough Rapid Transit Company, the Brooklyn Manhattan Transit Corporation, and the Independent Subway System. Because lines were built by competing companies, they often crossed or paralleled each other without connections. In some cases, rival builders put down nearly identical routes, like multiple north-south lines in Manhattan, while leaving whole areas of Queens and Brooklyn as transit deserts. Signals, track layouts, and power systems were all designed separately, and many of those legacy systems are still in use today, making modernization slower and far more expensive, which is incredibly needed. As for the price of tickets, it's only $3 from 2026, and with the OMNY app, there's a weekly fare cap of $34. Once you spend over that, then the rest of the rides are all free. Basically, an unlimited pass activated after your 12th ride. But it feels even cheaper when considering that with each ticket, you get 1 free transfer between the subway and bus or Staten Island Railway within 2 hours of using it. The city's bus network is the secondary transport option to the subway, filling in the gaps for the areas not covered by trains, like Eastern Queens, Southeast Brooklyn, and Staten Island. It feeds these areas into the subway hubs, Yes, even for Staten Island, by way of crossing the Verrazzano Bridge into Brooklyn or delivering people to the St. George Ferry Terminal, which carries over 15 million people per year across the New York harbor. With a fleet of over 5,500 buses, it's the largest in the US, running on 374 routes across all 5 boroughs, many operating 24/7. In 2024, the system carried over 800 million passengers, averaging almost 2.6 million people every weekday. While this sounds like a lot, if you were to compare it to cities of similar stature like Paris or Singapore, their bus system carries over 1 billion people annually. So it's a bit lacking, but it's still doing better than other cities like Istanbul or Los Angeles. Though that 800 million figure includes commuter rails into the city and not just intercity travel. If it did, it'd be half that at 409 million according to the MTA, roughly around the same as Toronto's ridership. And it's a number that's continuously going down. Bus stops are normally located every 2 to 3 city blocks apart. Specific guidelines dictate that stops should be placed every 750 feet, which is a good distance. The problem though is that they're extremely slow. In fact, it's the slowest of any major bus system nationwide, traveling at an average speed of around 8 miles per hour. But it makes sense given how congested the city is. Every year, the average driver in NYC loses over 4 days to traffic. That's really all there is for public transport in the big city. I mean, there's the Staten Island Railway, which is just one line through the island, and a few commuter rails like the Long Island Railroad and Metro-North Railroad connecting the city to the suburbs of it. Now, perhaps the most classic form of transport is walking. New York City is extremely walkable, especially Manhattan. It's ranked as one of the most walkable cities in the world, and is even famous for its bustling streets. In 2019, walking made up 31% of all journeys, by far higher than anywhere else in the US and up there with the rest of the world. In a country where basically everyone lives in car-centric cities, 55% of households in NYC don't even own a car. But for all the subway's uniqueness, the city is struggling to keep hold of it. See, New York's public transport, while extremely efficient, is also extremely mismanaged. From the 1970s till essentially the 2000s, the subway was chronically being underfunded and not maintained properly. Many parts of the system were close to 100 years of age. And let's not forget, this system is absolutely massive, the second largest on Earth, running 24/7. More and more things kept happening even into the 2010s. Corrupt politicians removing billions in funding from the MTA, everything costing way more money than it should due to outside contractors hiring contractors who hire contractors, and so on. For example, the estimated cost of the Long Island Railroad project, known as East Side Access, went from originally $1.8 billion to $11 billion, nearly $3.5 billion for each new mile of track, 7 times the average elsewhere in the world. The first phase of the 2nd Avenue subway, a line that runs under 2nd Avenue on the east side of Manhattan, had cost $4.45 billion for 2 miles. Everything just costs way more than it should. As a result, there's been an ever-increasing backlog of issues. It culminated in the 2017 to 2021 MTA transit crisis due to ongoing reliability, funding, and crowding issues. Even with their annual budget of almost $20 billion these past few years, nothing much has changed. In 2022, apparently $690 million was lost to fare evasion, significantly more than the $500 million a year before. But all this may be changing soon, because in May 2025, the MTA approved a $68.4 billion capital plan over 4 years, with more than 90% of it dedicated to finally rebuilding and improving the system, not expanding. 2,000 new train cars will be ordered. More than 60 stations will become accessible. More than 75 miles of signals will be modernized. There'll be modern fare gates installed at over 150 stations. The Grand Central Artery will be overhauled, and much, much more. The only funding towards expansion will be put toward the planning of the Interborough Express, a 14-mile line connecting southern Brooklyn to central Queens, a heavily underserved transit area. So things are looking up, to say the least. But even with all the subway's imperfections, there's an iconicness to it that no other public transportation system in the world has. It's grimy, chaotic, filled with graffiti, and yet it's the lifeblood of the city. Now, to end this, today's topic might be one of the most important I've ever covered. because we're entering an AI race that could reshape the global economy. According to Morgan Stanley, this wave could create a wealth opportunity larger than the world's entire GDP. Right now, the battle is over computing power and data, but that game will soon end, and the next few decades will be redefined by embodied AI, technology that turns knowledge into vision, language, and physical action. In other words, humanoid robots. That's where today's sponsor of this video, Global Humanoid Holdings, US ticker RBOHF, comes in. It's one of the first and few pure-play public companies in the humanoid robotics sector. Think of it as a publicly traded venture capital firm, investing directly in startups building the future of embodied AI. This gives everyday investors access to a space usually reserved for accredited investors. Shares of RBOHF are available with Interactive Brokers, Schwab, Fidelity, and E-Trade. The total addressable market is enormous, spanning everything from sensors, batteries, and semiconductors to robot brains and mechanical components. Every industry is on the verge of automation, and anything that can be automated will be. With global powers like the US and China, and corporations like Tesla, Apple, Meta, and Google racing to dominate humanoid robotics, Global Humanoid Holdings, ticker RBOHF, is strategically positioned at the frontier of what could become the defining technology of the century. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Make sure to check out this video on how and why New York City became split into boroughs. I'll see you there.